Well, another very warm welcome back, everybody, and thanks for tuning in once more to my YouTube channel. And of course, thanks to each and every one of my brand new subscribers who have recently signed up to my channel since my last video posting. I do hope you're continuing to find entertainment with regards looking at these old vintage race bikes as we currently head towards the 12,000 subscriber total. So thanks to each and every one of you for your continuing support. Okay, coming up next, we're going to take another look at another bike from the Terry Pickering Classic Dirt Bike collection, and this time we're going to have a look at his 400 Maico from 1978. Now, this is another bike that was refurbished and rebuilt by the very talented hands of Keith Ree. So without any further delay, let's just jump straight into the video. Okay, this lovely 1978 400 Maico is another product of Terry's massive collection of old dirt bike parts that have been completely refurbished and then used to build a brand new machine. Now, although Terry supplied the bits and pieces, the actual hard work was carried out by Terry's bike building mate, Keith Ree. Now, Keith knows his way around these old German bikes as he used to ride for them back in the day, so there's not much Keith doesn't know about these iconic Twinshockers. Now, on the day that I grabbed these video clips and pictures, it was absolutely raining cats and dogs, monsoon style outside, so we had to wheel the bike into Terry's workshop here to do the filming. So I do hope that doesn't spoil your view when you're looking at the bike. Now, almost all of the parts that were used in the bike's construction were period correct for the bike's year, but other things like the front and rear wheels were rebuilt. Now, as you're no doubt aware, these 400 Maico two-stroke motors were a superb power plant for a motocross machine, with this of course being the smaller motor than its bigger brother, the mighty 490 Mega 2, but it's still nonetheless a sweet little piston port engine, and one to which I can personally relate to, as I had a similar 440 engine in my 1980 bike, but these 400s weren't as brutal as the 490s and much easier to handle. Now, before everybody reaches for the comments section of the video to say that Maico's never had this Cerakote ceramic coating on their engine casings, then you'd be absolutely correct in that assumption, although I think Keith has added the Cerakote coating to the clutch casing just to give the motor a certain little twist and individuality. But as I said, this is not an original bike from 1978, so why not? Now again, it's good to see that Keith's kept the older standard Bing carburetor on the 400 motor, because these were, and in fact still are, very good fuel vaporizers for these Maico motors, and I could never really understand why owners often swapped them for more modern Japanese parts. But I must say, this is still a very good rebuild of this old Maico, or Maico if you say it that particular way, but almost everything appears to be correct for one of these 78 Magnum Maicos, and again, these had the old Motoplat electronic ignition as standard, although I do hear that other systems are now available as a substitute. Now, the bike's exhaust expansion chamber looks for all the world like the original pipe from 1978, but then again, spare parts were never really a big problem when building a Maico, which is what makes them a very good choice as a vintage twin-shock racer. And the same could be said for this exhaust tailpipe, which looks the real deal, and it would have been so easy for Keith just to fit a nice shiny alloy replacement pipe, but again, he's tried to keep the bike as near as possible to the 1978 specification. Now again, as you'd expect, these Maico forks underwent a full restoration before being used on the bike again, but for a motocross race bike from the late 1970s, these still did a very decent job of soaking up bumps on the track. That was, of course, as long as you had them set up properly, but remember, this was still the 1970s, and these conventional suspension systems were really just the technology of their time. Now, back in 1978, I'm not entirely sure as to what kind of rear shocks would have been fitted on the back of these Maicos, although it could have been a set of those dreaded Italian Corticossos, if I remember. But these nice looking replacements certainly fit the bike quite well, although I must admit I don't have a clue as to their make or place of origin. Now, also on the back of the bike, your standard Maico steel swing arm, of course, which again is correct for the bike's year, as I've seen many of these Maico restorations in the past where owners have changed these strong steel swing arms for lighter alloy replacements, although of course the alloy part may be lighter, but they can't seem to take the pounding or punishment that these hardy steel items do. And I've heard stories where owners revert back to their old steel swing arms when cracks started to appear on the softer alloy units. But again, on our featured example here, the bike has the correct soft alloy rear brake backplate on the hub, and of course all of the other associated brake anchor, chain guide, and of course the chain adjusters. Now, of course, once again, in 1978, Maico were still using what, in my opinion, was one of the best looking Maico fuel tanks of its time, and they would of course use these metal fuel cells right up to 1979 before then switching to those dreaded plastic tanks in 1980. Now, the bike's seat once again was reasonably comfy for an old off-roader, but of course this is a motocross bike and not an armchair, and comfort of course was secondary to functionality. Now, once more, it looks like Keith has pulled out all the stops to try and keep things as period correct as possible on this bike, and he's fitted these quality Magura levers and their covers, and of course, as in 1978, a Swedish-made Gunnar Gasser twist grip just to keep those Maico horses under control. Now again, the bike's plastics were easy enough for Keith to sort out, as this is where his expertise lies in refurbishing these old and faded motorcycle plastics. So you can imagine that sorting out these old front number plates and these quite nice Maico side panels was simply just a breeze for Keith, and I must say they're actually hard to distinguish between the original new old stock items. Although the more that you look at this bike, the harder it is just to try and work out which parts have been refurbished and which are brand new replacements, because Keith's done such a good job of putting this old Maico together. It's actually hard to think that this is not a brand new machine from 1978. Such is the superb finish overall. But when Terry tends to hand over his boxes of old bike parts to Keith just to get him to build a brand new bike from the spare parts, then you can rest assured that Keith will make sure that it's done to the very best of his ability. And if you've ever seen some of the many other bikes on my YouTube channel that Keith has built for Terry, then you'll know that nothing but the very best quality finish will do, and that's why Terry has one of the best classic motocross collections in the UK. Well, there you have it, another fantastic machine from the Terry Pickering classic dirt bike collection, that 400 Maico Twinshocker. That, of course, is just one of 16 bikes that I filmed just recently from Terry's collection, so look out for more of his fantastic race bikes coming soon to my video channel. Okay, coming up in my next video, time for another British classic from Terry's collection, and the next time we will be taking a look at this lovely 1972 HIS Stormer. Now, this was a bike that was not refurbished by Terry, but Terry bought this machine at the Telford show a few years back. So I do hope you'll retune to take a look at that machine. But until then, everybody, of course, continue to be safe and well until we all return once more to talk vintage iron right here on your favourite classic dirt bike TV channel.